Just give me a second to load the screen because I have this new light and I got to get it dialed in a little bit. I can't see anything yet. So this is the most important holiday of the year for me, a true holy day. Okay, so let's see what spectrum looks good. That's a little bit much. That's pretty natural looking, right? Is that any better than it's been in the past? I don't know. Okay, so 1111 is really kind of an incredible subject, and it's one of those things that I almost can't even talk about without making the caveat that, it's such a trendy, popular, sort of new agey idea that uh, I don't, you hesitate. It's almost embarrassing to talk about it. Uh, what is this? Is basically akin to Black Friday. Oh, nice. But as it turns out, it's one of those rare exceptions where it's it's universally known for the same reason that trees are universally known. It's part of our experience. It's just as real of a phenomena as any other phenomena in the universe. What's up, Mr. Charles? So, um, even as a glyph, it is telling us the whole story. For example, of synchronicity, the symmetrical nature of it is a huge clue to the mechanisms that allow these synchronicities to play out. So let's start at the beginning. I mean, if you follow my channel, you've probably heard some of these stories, but I have to tell them, and if you're new, they'll be new to you. But there there's a time in everyone's life that embarks on this journey to escape the matrix programming, to transcend our cultural conditioning, and attain higher states of consciousness. This is something that was really, really popularized in the '60s, but I think people didn't really have much of a roadmap back then. They didn't really know how to use these compounds, and also I think it's really interesting to consider that there's this obviously this like fundamental drive in us, some kind of instinct to try to pursue and attain these higher states of consciousness. Um, but I think a lot of people don't really ask the question, like, what is actually going to happen if you are successful in changing your consciousness, and what is going to happen. And I think that a lot of us are really surprised to discover that things actually do happen, that things change, that the parameters of what is available to you to perceive is expanded. And that comes as quite a surprise, and it can be really unsettling. This is one of the reasons that integration is such a necessary aspect of really powerful psychedelic experiences like DMT and ayahuasca, because after the fact, your experience of life changes, and I don't think it would be quite so challenging if it wasn't for the fact that most of us, unless I think if you're younger, it's probably not as bad, but we've really been conditioned to be concerned that if you take psychedelics, for example, you're going to go insane. And so when you start to have these experiences that, voices in your head are telling you things that actually happen, you're precognizing experiences and all this stuff, you can start to worry that you're losing your mind. It's a very common experience, and I think without somebody there that's been through the process to sort of lend some insight, there's real danger of actually having some issues with this. And it's not just really psychedelics. I mean, there's all sorts of um, catalysts for consciousness, and this isn't about having trippy experiences exactly, or or cool stories. This is about learning to communicate with light and to walk with knowledge wisely and to um, harmonize with ourselves and therefore with the universe at large. And these experiences that precipitate these major changes in consciousness, as we'll see when I start talking about the experiences that I've had, can be really challenging to deal with. And on top of the sort of surreal Twilight Zone kind of Stranger Things kind of um, nature of the experiences, they tend to happen in clusters. So once you have pried open your third eye, you have um, yeah, I would say decalcified your pineal gland, but we all know that that's really dumb because the pineal gland is calcium carbonate crystals. It's supposed to be calcium, so don't do that. Don't melt your pineal gland. But once you have succeeded in prying open your third eye, you're not just dealing with synchronicities. You have a sharper sense of intuition. You have um, all sorts of inner guides that I've never been able to decide for myself what they really are. Are they part of the subconscious mind? Are they part of the universal mind? Or are they actually spiritual beings with their own objective identity? And last night I was talking about how one of the strongest bits of evidence for me that there is some agency that opens the gates, that allows us to receive these downloads or bits of information, but it seems to filter other pieces because certain things seem to be withheld until they're appropriate, and bits are given in ways that sort of set that create fertile soil for the seeds that are incoming. So it does, in my experience, seem that it is more than just the subconscious, and so uh, let's talk about how I originally came to be aware of 1111 and this idea, because it was well before it became really really popular, and I'm really thankful for that because our tendency to project, you really want to have these experiences, everyone else is having them, so I would imagine that if you have a lot of friends that are off drinking ayahuasca, or they've achieved their third eye pry, people are going to get jealous. I mean, I experienced that during my own awakening process because I was really really far ahead of the people around me, and so they would imagine a lot of synchronicities and really stretch to try to make things, because they wanted to be in that themselves. And so we really, really, it's. Let me put it another way too. In the mystery school traditions, the secrecy is not just there to concentrate power among an elite group. In fact, in the White Lodges, like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, that's not really a concern. That's not part of the agenda to concentrate power. Part of it is actually to protect other initiates from not knowing whether things were planted in their heads or not. It's really important that these experiences are generated organically so that they're authentic, and so there are practices and compounds and all of these things that can catalyze the experiences, but they must be they must be genuinely created as part of this process. And so I hadn't heard about 1111. I had no idea that it was a thing, and I had already entered into this snowballing sort of third eye open awakening process, and it's something that had been going on my entire life, but it really reached a fever pitch, and I think like June of 2010. and the synchronicities and my ability to use like precognition and all of these things of that sort of dark secrets inside Bohemian Grove. It's funny you mentioned that because during a lot of this period, I was living like 20 minutes from the Bohemian Grove. Um, but let's not get distracted here. I'm all this stuff is happening. People around me are noticing, and and there's a lot to it. It's not just any one thing. There's synchronicities, and then there's like guides or voices in my head. But everything they tell me turns out to be true. I'm finding books that I've dreamed about that actually turn out to be wherever they were in the dream, and all of this sort of stuff is all happening constantly. And when I say constantly, I mean like it was just a constant barrage of borderline supernatural kind of stuff. And so this process had already begun, and one night I was sitting with my then girlfriend discussing uh, just what had been happening, and she said, "So, well, what about the numerology of the number 11?" And so, when we think about numerology, I think it's important to remember that what numerology is really about is the idea that numbers are a process. It's not just they're not just a symbol that represents something like an allegory or uh, it's about what they can do, right? So we talk about like the number 9, for example, in gematria. Its function is to reveal the truth. So once you have determined the numerical value of a word or phrase and reduced it, then you'll multiply it by 9 because any number multiplied by 9 and then reduced is 9 again. So, the truth is always the truth. And so, the number 11 is the number of magical expansion. And for a reason, Aleister Crowley called it the number of the new eon. And there are a number of reasons for this. For one thing, 10 is like in Jewish mysticism, a Kabbalistic understanding of it is like there's the 1 and then the 0 represents, it's like the same essence of whatever number it is, but the addition of a 0 represents a higher consciousness or a multiplication of powers, which is what it does in terms of value as well. And so 11 is the first step beyond the completion, the crowning of Keter, the reception of divinity, the realization of Godhead in man, or man as Godhead, as an avatar of the divine. And so the 11 is the emergence of this divine being on its new stage. And so we're no longer dealing with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're dealing with 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And so if you multiply any number times 1, it remains itself, right? It's as if nothing happened. But if you multiply it times 11, you get essentially the same thing. You get 2 9s or 2 8s. So you have not changed the essence of the being that has been affected by the number, but you have multiplied its essence and increased its power. And so this is one of the aspects of what 11 is about in functional numerology, which is what's important. And so that's one aspect of it. And then also a lot of people don't know that in the Kabbalistic tree of life, there's 10 sephira, but there's actually 11. And the 11th is da'at, and it's at the throat, and it is knowledge. And it's not drawn as an actual sphere because it's not real. Knowledge is relation. It's not any absolute thing. It's not something that can be It's not an energy that can be like quantitatively um, or even substantively known. It's just perception. It's just illusion. And so the Sephiroth for knowledge, I've always thought it was interesting that it kind of sounds like death too. Or if you look at it written down, da, it kind of looks like death. Um, and it also, where it's positioned in the throat, you can see all of the other Sephiroth have lines going to it, and so you can see how it's relation, but it's not anything very real. But it's also fundamentally what we're accessing, at least in terms of the cognitive capacities of a higher consciousness state. Uh, it's it is very much essential, this idea of knowledge. Um, and so on another level, okay, and so let's add another little addendum here to this definition. Um, so if you look at the glyph of 1111, or even just 111 by itself, you have two ones. And so you have this idea of individuality, but also of unity, and of duality, but essential wholeness. The one is in the all is in the one, and it is in duality. And then when you have two 11s, you have the idea of sort of a reflection of the whole of duality and matter, and then duality and spirit. So it can also be taken as a numerical glyph of the Tetragrammaton, which is the four elements, amongst other things. And so if we are to accept my theory of how synchronicity works, and why it actually happens, and this is great, and this is what's new. Man, I never got to the stories either, did I? But let's set it all up with this definition here. I think this is going okay. So I got like 2 hours of sleep last night, so it's a little difficult. Okay, so this idea of symmetry, right? Everything is balanced by its opposite, and we're talking about the two 11s representing sort of the energetic 11, and then the material 11 on the other side of the veil. And so the theory of synchronicity basically is that when you have created a bridge between the conscious and the subconscious mind, these coincidences that have meaning and oftentimes can serve to inform us of things. It's almost like a communication from the universal mind. And even Einstein acknowledged this, and he said that coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. And so this idea of symmetry, and also this sort of like both sides of the veil, right? So our subconscious and conscious mind, but you could also think of that, sort of unfurl it to your inner being and the exterior world. And so once you have created this 1111 in your conscious and subconscious mind, right, you have this connection, that same symmetry is perceived in the external universe. And so also this is not supersymmetry. I was using that term really loosely last night because supersymmetry sort of refers to the same thing. It's like energy that has the same velocity as matter, and whether supersymmetric particles actually exist or not is still up for debate. But it's a similar kind of concept, and so if these really, really high, perfect symmetry in, that's what I was calling supersymmetry yesterday. I'm reappropriating the term, but at really, really high cycles, levels of vibration, very, very quickly cycling energy, is the only place where we have symmetry in the subatomic world, like perfect symmetry. And so, if you consider that as we elevate our own consciousness, we start to experience this symmetry um, that is this, not supersymmetry, but you guys follow me? You know, very high cycles, things become more and more symmetrical. So as you elevate your consciousness, the symmetry with your internal experience is synchronized with your external experience, and that's just how it all fucking works. Um, so, and you know, and I think I figured out where the symmetry comes from. If you look at oscillating waves, EMFs, um, if you, it's difficult to describe, but if you emit them and then another set, like, you know, behind it by 50%, where they overlap, um, you eventually will get a pattern just like the tree of life. And so it occurred to me that these intersections of these waves that create the symmetry is where consciousness comes from. And it is a higher and higher density that gives us, you know, genius and consciousness of higher and higher order. Okay, so now that we have thoroughly established what all of this stuff means, I mean, it took me a long time to kind of piece it all together, and you know, there's more, but that's a good framework for us to work from. And so, you know, I'm having all these crazy experiences all the time, and my girlfriend asked me about the numerology of the number 11, and I did not answer her the way that I just answered you guys, because I just started thinking about all this stuff, and I was giving her what answers I could, and she was working on a painting because she's an artist, and she had a 24-inch ruler, right? And so she's talking to me, and she's like, she keeps like interrupting me because she's like, damn it, like what the hell's going on? And finally she's like, oh my god. And this is almost too weird to deal with, because this is a ruler that came from a mold, so it's not like there would be a printing error. I mean, it doesn't make sense, but the ruler had two 11s on it, and so, you know, we're talking about 11. Neither of us have any concept of 11 at this point. And so the second 11 was where the number 23 was supposed to be, and that is the number that's associated with synchronicity. And I knew that from, you know, reading the Illuminatus trilogy by Robert Anton Wilson, which is an amazing book to read. By the way, you guys, don't forget to hit the like button. Please share, subscribe, support us on Patreon. There's Zelle and PayPal and cryptocurrency address and Cash App, because we've been demonetized. And so, you know, like, I just bought this little light here, and I'm going to get a microphone, and we just need help to pay for all this stuff and to make more videos. And keep your eyes out. I made an Aldous Huxley, or I started working on one. Speaking of synchronicities, today I was thinking it's 11:11, and we haven't had any like mind-blowing synchronicities, and so I started working on the Huxley video. Didn't tell anybody, and my Enrica's brother, my partner's not brother, sister's boyfriend is here from the States, and she said that he just randomly started talking about Aldous Huxley at lunch today, and so I'm up here starting this, and so it's that symmetry. Right? You know, I mean, I've never heard him talk about Huxley before. It's just, you know. Okay, so we got to get back on track, though, and I did my little spiel for support us. I got a little bit off base there. Okay, so this ruler with the two 11s, right? What the hell? So the synchronicities keep increasing and increasing and increasing and increasing. And so like the next day at work, she calls me and says that she had just taken a picture of 4 bears in a tree in the front yard. And so I'm pulling this like awning, I guess, down, and there's plywood with stuffing, what is it, insulation. And I pull the insulation out, and bear claws, like I just hung up the phone, and bear claws fall out from behind the insulation, right? And that is probably because there are a lot of Native Americans in southwestern Colorado, and so they probably put them as a blessing or something in there. But still, you know. And so things like this happen a bunch. And then a couple of weeks later, my roommate comes out of his room and he says, "Hey, come watch this email that this video link to a video." And there's this Native American guy, Sioux Sundance Chief, with long feather headdress, and he's saying, you're invited to meet with all of these representatives from all these tribes all over the planet. We have a very important message to give you all. And so we decide to go. And before we left, I called Golden Light Eagle is his name. You can actually look him up. He actually does like star knowledge conferences all around the United States, usually at like the Serpent Mound in Ohio, I think it is. And like they go out on boats and try to talk to dolphins or whatever. And so I call him to get directions, and as I'm about to hang up the phone, he goes, "Oh, hey, by the way, bring your little Indian friend." And I was like, but he's an Indian, so Native American, so he's allowed to call them Indians. I guess it's kind of like the N-word, like they can use it and we can't or something, but that's what he said. And so I didn't know who the hell he was talking about, and then the phone rings as soon as I get off with him, and it's this Ute girl that I know. We're not really friends, and I said, "Hey, do you want to come with me to this thing?" And so she says, "Yeah," and her house was literally on the way. Like we just had to pull off the road, put her in the car, and keep going. And so we get there, and as soon as I get out of the car, this guy walks up to me and looks me in the eyes really intensely, and I feel this like zzz, and I'm like, "Whoa, what the fuck was that?" And he grabs me by the arm and he says, "I haven't seen you in like 40,000 years. We need to get to the ritual." And I'm like, "Ritual? Or ceremony? Ritual?" I think he used the word ritual. And so we go around to the back of the building, and the circle's closing, and there's 13 people, and there's this Hawaiian guy in a red jumpsuit, and he calls the wind, and it actually blows so hard that gravel goes flying, and just all this crazy shit. And so their message was about 2 things. The Star Tribes were basically aliens and interdimensional beings that the human race has always been in contact with. Actually, the next time I saw Golden Light Eagle, I just happened to turn on the television at my grandmother's house, and it was Ancient Aliens, and there he is with this bar on fucking Ancient Aliens. And so, I mean, he was going to do my wedding, but tragically his son died and he couldn't make it. So their message was that a lot of us, that the Native American people all over the planet, various tribes and different peoples, Babylonia, Syria, the Navajo, have always been in contact with these star people. And so their other message, so we go in and we sit down after this thing, and then Golden Light Eagle is talking. And he says, it's really important that you guys understand the 1111 frequencies and what this is all about. And my head almost exploded because, there's the ruler now, Golden Light Eagle, that whole thing, so let's see. I'm trying to think where this thread of 1111's picked up again. I mean, it's happened even recently to pretty remarkable. Fernando, since you brought that up, okay, he said in the Kabbalion, control of weather and elements is said to come naturally with extremely high consciousness stages. That is very much true, I think, and it also music and also crowds. And this is something that actually has been verified in a physics experiment recently, that the consciousness of a group of people has a measurable impact on subatomic particles. So an individual, some people I suspect are much more, have much more of an impact. But in general, if you have a group of people, then their influence on subatomic particles is measurable. And even on like random number generators and slot machines. But one of the legends of the Grateful Dead was that they would play like, say, "Looks Like Rain," and it would start to rain, and if they needed the rain to stop, they would play "Here Comes Sunshine." And I've heard this story from God. One guy was telling me this story in like Vegas or somewhere, and well, that's where it happened actually. So maybe I don't know where the hell I was, but at any rate, this guy's telling me the story. That like it had been pouring. It was Vegas, the monsoon season, so it had been raining for like 4 days, and really, really pouring. And so everyone's waiting for the band to come out, and so they hear there was something about like all these geese that flew, and then a single ray of like sun illuminated the birds, and so they start playing "Here Comes Sunshine," and the clouds just disperse, and they're just totally gone. And so when they played the last note of the show, the sky broke open and started pouring again. Now I've seen it happen. I did it with one of my first bands. I feel like we pulled this off. We were setting up actually extraordinary synchronicity going into this photo shoot. We were doing a photo shoot before the gig at this guy's ranch, and he happened to have Jesus nailed to the butt of a gun from like a antique fair that his mother had found in like the 1940s or something. He was pretty old, so she was way back in the day. And I mean, what a weird random thing for this guy to have. And then the band was called Shotgun Jesus. And so we're starting to set up, and the guy's like, "Hey, I have this thing, let me go get it." And so he comes out with Jesus nailed to the butt of a gun in this little glass box, and we're just like, "What the hell?" So something else happened, and then people just started saying random stuff, and a lot of it happened. Like the bass player was like, "And then an eagle flew over and went pew," or whatever, and it happened like immediately. A bald eagle flies right over and makes the sound, right? And so then we set up and we're playing, and we were playing Comfortably Numb, and there's like that heavy jam at the end. And so as the energy was building and building and building, the wind started like whipping harder and harder and harder, perfectly synchronized with the music, to the extent that the tent got pulled out of it was like these big metal poles stuck in buckets of concrete, and it ripped one out of the concrete, and it was like flailing around everywhere, like this 10-foot fucking pole, and pouring down rain all of a sudden. So we wrapped up the jam because it was getting too violent. As soon as the music died, the wind stopped, everything was calm, rain stopped. And also, I mean, even in the anthropological record, anthropologists have documented Native Americans boiling water without a heat source and all sorts of stuff along those lines. And like I said, Reynolds, the Hawaiian shaman, he said at the end of that ritual, "May the wind blow to confirm the power of our prayer." And it did. And last time I told that story, I had forgotten about this other element of it. At the time, the big oil leak was happening in the Bay or Gulf of Mexico, right? Remember that? Louisiana was just full of oil, and they could not get a cap on it. And so at the end of the weekend with the Star Tribe, I think they call themselves, with Golden Light Eagle and Reynolds, the Hawaiian guy, and all these people like that, we did this big circle and had this like prayer, and we found out like 20 minutes later that right when we were doing that, they finally got the cap back on the thing and stopped the oil. Like right at the same exact, moment. And it's not really realistic to say that we, single-handedly caused that to happen, but I think that is there a relationship? Yes, you know, and it speaks to the power of the collective will, and this is, of course, you know, fundamentally why there's so much effort to divide the people, because if we realize that we are telepathic, that we have precognition, and you know, that we're eternal and we can't be killed, you know, if you really, really know that you're eternal, you know, what is getting shot or a life sentence in prison or whatever, you know? I mean, you're not really worried about much if you really think that you're an eternal being. And so, I mean, if the minds of if the will of the people that are the illuminated triclopses is unified, we're going to find that we have the capacity to use what Einstein called spooky action at a distance. We are assisted by forces that cannot be controlled through conventional means, and it's the cat's already out of the bag, I think. So, you know, once this gets any bigger, I mean, I think it's already having a pretty tremendous impact. The other thing is, I think that once the genie's out of the bottle, there's no putting it back in the bottle. And so, you know, once we have one individual unit of consciousness oscillating at a higher and higher and higher frequency, because of entrainment, the rest of the individual monads, the individual units of consciousness, the holographic fragments of the deity, they have no choice but to oscillate higher as well. And so as they oscillate higher and higher, the experience, and not only the experience, but the presence of symmetry is increased. And with symmetry comes order, and this process is directed by our conscious will. So if we are, you know, oscillating higher and higher and higher, and we have an increasing number of wills that are unified and focused on these things, and the higher the oscillation, the more symmetry is imposed upon the order, and that order is compelled to conform to our wills. You guys can see where I'm going with this. We have the capacity to build a new world out of the bones of the dying world, and not a minute too soon. Okay, so back to the stories. Let's see. So the 11/11 thing. I mean, you know, tons of other synchronicities along the way. But about a year after all this stuff happened, during the weekend with the Star Tribe people, I had noticed that a lot of the elements of the story were surprisingly similar to this Tool song that is about smoking DMT and getting abducted by aliens, and, you know, the guy's like a high school dropout, which Maynard, who wrote the lyrics, isn't, and I am. Like, it actually fit, like, my situation. At one point I was like eating oranges in a fetal position, which is what the character in the song is doing. It was just really weird, you know. And so I noticed that, and then oh, and remember that Native Americans, like, you know, chanting and having rituals was part of it too, right? And also the number 111 was very important. So I happened to glance at the back of that Tool CD about a year later, and that song that seemed to be describing that weekend is 11 minutes and 11 seconds long. And the track that precedes it is 1 minute and 11 seconds long, and it's a Native American chant. So, just so bizarre. And then, so let's see, okay, and then you guys, you know, I mention it all the time, but the Phoenix Process video, if you click on 11/11, I managed to capture one of these synchronicities on video. And recently a friend of mine came to visit from Holland, and synchronicities started, you know, going batshit crazy all over the place. And he mentioned the word synchronicity as I pulled my phone out of my pocket, and sure enough, it's 11:11. Um, but I don't want to beat a horse to death. I feel like really in the first 30 minutes, what I told you guys was that's the crux of the apostrophe. That's the essence of the thing, the symbolism. We've been through it all. Um, so, is there anything? Do you guys have any requests or? Man, today I was really thrilled to discover that my 81-year-old copy of the Kabbalion that I found through all these weird circumstances was not lost on the road. It was here the whole time. But speaking of like weird stuff, while I was on the road in the jungle, I did a live stream with the Kabbalion. I only have one copy, but it was here on the bookshelf when we got back. So that is pretty hard to understand how that happened. And honestly, like 2 weeks ago, I was really bummed out about it because I don't really have very many possessions, and that one is it here? It's probably somewhere right around it here. You know what? Maybe I'll even, when we're getting close to wrapping this up, I'll go get it and we'll randomly read a passage out of it and see what I have to say about it and what you guys think of it. But I thought that it's gonna be here somehow, and I thought that's just too much, man. It's not gonna just reappear in the house. And today Enrico comes in the kitchen and she has the Kabbalion, and it's not possible because, I mean, the video is there. I was in the jungle. No one has seen it since then. Like, we searched all of our suitcases, and it wasn't like in our suitcases. It was on a bookshelf downstairs in her parents' house, which doesn't make any sense because we wouldn't have put it there. I mean, it's just that was pretty far out. So that's 11, you guys. I mean, I don't really know what else to say about it. There's 11 likes. Oh, congratulations to anybody. I know some of you guys bought Cody. It's definitely blowing up right now. Yep, still going up, 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 up. It looks like we might hit a new high, all-time high. Well, okay, so I am Dwayne this time. He's saying, shadow boxing the apocalypse. If we wake up enough people on psychedelics, can we fight what's to come? I don't know if we can or if we can't. Only a fool predicts the weather. Only newcomers and fools. That's what they used to say in the high country in Colorado, right? So, I was thinking about this in the shower a little while ago. Like, let me see. Keep filtering through these lights. That's weird. That's weird too. I don't know. Is this any better, you guys, having this light than like not having it? Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's okay. Anyways, can we fight the thing? Again, we have to. I don't know if you were tuned in at the time, but I was talking about how higher oscillations eventually achieve perfect symmetry, but only at extremely high oscillations is there perfect symmetry. And so as we elevate our consciousness, which causes cycles at lower speeds to entrain with the highest, right? That's what the law of entrainment says that cycles do. And we can observe the manifestation of our internal progress manifest as synchronicity, which is internal and external symmetry, right? And if we are able to unify our will, which even physics has demonstrated, is exponentially more powerful when there are more people, right? When you have a very large group, the ability for our consciousness to, that's because you guys, it's not woo, it's electromagnetic waves that are where our consciousness originates, that are carrying the information and dictating to the energy what to do. So if you have more units of consciousness directing their intent, it's just more power, right? So the answer is, if we get enough people on board, and yeah, I mean, that's it. If we get enough people in time, then we are able to influence the outcome in ways that are we can't even conceive of yet right now. You know what I mean? They're not only that, but when you have lower frequencies, they're going to entrain with the higher frequencies, right? So if you have people that are against us or people that are not awake, they have really no choice but to come with us, because their physics is going to constrain them to join us, basically. And that would include the people that are coming from a place of pure ego and evil and whatever else. Ultimately, their consciousness will be entrained with ours, and because we're cycling at the higher rate, there's nothing they can do but be drawn along. We're towing the line. The people that are really out in the front of the thing are, in the mystery schools, they're called prima mobiles, or prime movers. And so, you know, and mushrooms told me that when I was a kid, that, you know, if you advance your consciousness further than anyone else, it's dragging the whole net of consciousness with it. And that's what Aleister Crowley said the job of a magician is, to move the entire consciousness of the human race up higher, to expand the parameters of what's available to our experience, and to move us closer to divinity as a collective. So yes, I guess is the short answer. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely daunting, but there's a number of ways to think about it. It is pressure on coal is what yields diamonds, and so all of these forces are necessary in order to create something worthwhile, something that can last, something that has substance. It's, you know, I mean, when you chisel away at rock in order to create a statue, it's very hard, sharp materials, and lots of beating and banging and violence that ultimately yield this thing of beauty. And such is the way of the world, you know. Felt like I saw something. Oh, okay, the core of gender. Are you still here, Fernando? I'll be happy to talk about that. So, well, let me go grab the Kabbalion. All right, and you know, I was talking about books that I found during that period through dreams, right? This is one of them. Pretty beat up now. I've had it for a long time, but I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but let's see, how do I move it so that you can read the Oh, I don't know where the camera is. I'm trying. Okay, there you go. Wait, what? Man, that's really tricky, because it's not synced. So it's, anyways. The stamp says, esoteric book for Scottish Rite use only, to be returned upon withdrawal or death of recipient. And so this is the book that I was dreamed was on that bookshelf, and then I went to get it. And then this is an 81-year-old copy of the Kabbalion. And I mean, look at it. It's like pristine. It's just like there's not a stain or. Yeah, let's see, 1940. Oh, it's older than that now. Yeah, Morals and Dogma is the Masonic one, and then the Kabbalion is the other one. So we're talking about gender, page 183. Okay, so the Kabbalion says gender isn't everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes. The great seventh Hermetic principle, the principle of gender, embodies the truth that there is gender manifested in everything, that the masculine and feminine principles are ever present and active in all phases of phenomena on each and every plane of life. At this point, we think it well to call your attention to the fact that gender, in its Hermetic sense, and sex, is the ordinarily accepted use of the term, are not the same. Now that's an interesting statement, considering the debate about gender and whether or not it's flexible. And it's also interesting that Aleister Crowley wrote in the introduction to the Book of the Law that one of the features of the people during the new Aeon would be that they are more epicene and bisexual. And epicene means that they're not of a determinable sex. And so the word gender is derived from the Latin root meaning to beget, to procreate, to generate, to create, to produce. And there's a bunch of unnecessary stuff. Okay, but there's a distinct manifestation of the principle of gender among the corpuscles, ions, or electrons, which constitute the basis of matter, as science now knows the latter, and which by forming certain combinations form the atom, which until lately was regarded as final and indivisible. The latest word of science is that the atom is composed of a multitude of corpuscles, electrons, or ions, the various names being applied by different authorities, revolving around each other and vibrating at a very high degree and intensity. But the accompanying statement is made that the formation of the atom is really due to the clustering of negative around a positive. The positive seeming to exert a certain influence upon the negative, causing the latter to assume certain combinations and thus create or generate an atom. And so what he's saying basically is that the same generative process that occurs in human beings and animals and plants, having to do with the interaction of these antinomies, opposites interacting to generate, or the alchemical process, combine two things in order to create a third thing of a higher nature, or you put a man and woman together, they have a baby. You put negative and positive particles together, and you get an atom. And so the correlation there being the male is the positive and the female is the negative, but in this case we're talking about female as the receptive, as the facilitator, and the male as the point, and the push, the drive, the idea. New eat and hot eat, sure. So, long story short, I mean, and I've told this story before about, how I've assumed the character of the genuine masculine when interacting with women before, and then they would do the same thing. And so I'm trying to answer Fernando's question with this. Basically, that's it in a nutshell. That these two opposing energies, it's the same thing. Um, they are gender, the masculine influence, these characteristics that we associate with masculinity, the cerebral, intellectual, the straight line and the point, the point as opposed to space, and then all of these attributes of the feminine, these are actual energies. It's the two sort of fundamental archetypes of consciousness that interact to give rise to everything. And so, a good example is the mandrake plant. When you have a male mandrake plant, the root actually looks like a human male. It has straight legs and a straight torso, and it looks like a little man. And the female mandrake plant has curves and breasts, and so why is that? It's because this force, this manifestation of consciousness and energy that we call masculine and feminine, has these characteristics. It is, a thing. The force that gives us gender exists independently of beings that have genitals. It's something beyond that. It is a fundamental constituent, not only influence, but constituent part of Hello Virginia, of the universe. So I don't know if that helped, but that's the answer, I guess. Anything else you guys want to throw at me? Because otherwise, I think going once, going twice. Okay, guys, thank you so much for spending this time with me. I hope you have a wonderful 11/11. I hope that the information in this video was helpful and enlightening, and I hope that it all compels us to walk with knowledge wisely, to develop our capacity to speak with the light, because that's all that's happening. This is all a trick of the light. It's just light talking to itself right now. That's all there is, and all there ever will be, all there was. And so with that knowledge, and also our knowledge of the physics of the process that we're undergoing, I think that we can draw courage. If you understand what I presented in this video tonight, we should be able to use this knowledge of these things to give ourselves courage that we are going to be able to ultimately win. I guess I hate to use that word, but win the battle against Babylon. So is that it? No more questions, no more nothing? All right, you guys, good night. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Please hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us on Patreon, and you can send us support on PayPal and Zelle and cryptocurrency address as well. Thank you again, and good night.